So the Inktober challenge itself is over, but I'm not done with it yet. And I've had a lot of people join me through the shorts, so I'd like to do a little bit of a reflection in a short, and there will be a longer video where I've actually like written out my thoughts. Also, this definitely wasn't a short, so I don't know if I'm gonna like take pieces out of this and this will actually be the full video and I won't do a fully scripted thing. I don't know, you might not get to hear this part. But first things first, I wanted to reach out and say thank you to everybody who joined along and watched all of the shorts. I really appreciate it. And I'd love to know if you joined up because you're a writer, a reader, both, neither, and just enjoyed the shorts. The first thing I'd like to do post-challenge is a little bit of a reflection. So the first thing is that because I altered the challenge a little bit and was writing only 5 days a week and started a few weeks early, I didn't find the actual sitting down to write very difficult. So that was kind of a surprise. Now, it was very short sprints, and so I do think it would be different if I was trying to finish a piece or just if I had set a longer time. The other thing that also definitely would have made the challenge easier was if I wasn't filming it, because that was kind of the thing that was making me like not want to do it. Some days was like, oh gosh, I don't want to set up all of my equipment, I don't want to talk to the camera. So I'm just kind of surprised by how little the challenge itself challenged me in the sitting down to do it portion. However, of course, that doesn't mean that it didn't challenge me at all. Particularly, there were a couple of prompts that stumped me. They just didn't really bring a whole lot to mind. Those being, the two that I can think of off the top of my head are blunder and starfish, though I think there were a couple more. And both of those created pieces that I wasn't particularly excited about. The blunder one even more so. But Starfish I was like kind of excited about, but Blunder really did nothing for me. And the same thing happened with Lesson, now that I'm remembering this, is I knew that there was a better story to be told from the prompt if I had more time to kind of think about it, but my goal with the sprints was to like get to writing, and not really have a whole like outlining idea generation time. Talking about that though, the idea of thought generation and outlining, and therefore how prompts kind of force you to be a discovery writer or a pantser. And I kind of fall in the middle of that spectrum. I'm not really truly a discovery writer, I'm not really truly an outliner, or I'm not a pantser or a planner, I'm a plantser. And so something that I kind of noticed, and this has always been the case for me, is the first thing I do is write down a few of the immediate things that come to my mind, and I find that that kind of worked as a mini outline, just to get like some sort of thought down. And then the other thing that kind of worked as a mini outline for me in some of the prompts was the first paragraph or the first little bit, or even the whole piece, is very explanatory. Rather than showing, I was doing a lot of telling first and then kind of like jumping back and doing the showing after. The prompt that showed this the most for me was puzzling, because the first paragraph is like the main character saying, I always do a puzzle in the morning, basically. And then my brain was like, that's boring as heck. I need to jump back and I need to describe what this morning routine looks like. And if I decide to pursue that one, I'll definitely need to like just ditch that whole first paragraph and just jump into the morning routine. There were a few other things that kind of came with the process of being a discovery writer, which was false starts. So kind of like writing a couple sentences and like a new idea forming that's different enough that those sentences don't really matter anymore and you kind of start over again. The other thing is, as I was writing, there were a couple pieces that really morphed over time, and this kind of happened two directions. Sometimes they morphed and they just became like more solid of an idea. The characters kind of like revealed themselves, the setting revealed itself, and then other times it was morphing and it was no longer cohesive, which was an interesting thing. This one was most prevalent in, I forget what the prompt was, but the piece ended up being more like a character study, and it definitely could have been multiple different characters because different pieces lent themselves to different characters more. And so that piece is kind of just a confused mess. But that doesn't mean that I got nothing out of it. Like, there's still definitely, like, character ideas, but there just happens to be multiple characters. Because I didn't have that framework of an outline or, like, character vignette or something to work off of, I was kind of just throwing spaghetti at the wall. And then there was the other thing. So something that I do when I'm outlining is I tend to write down some like questions and things that I know that I'll have to research at some point. Whether I want to do that before or after I start writing is different depending on the piece and the like thing that must be researched. So starting a piece and knowing immediately that I would usually research something before I wrote it was kind of weird. This happened a couple of times, I think, but the one that's coming to my mind is the one about the bomb, because I based it off of feeling a far-off earthquake. And I was like, maybe a far-off bomb would have the same effect. I have no idea. I don't know, like, how far away you can feel a bomb or see the effects of a bomb or, like, whatever, or hear a bomb. So, like, all of that, I, like, could probably wait, but I likely would have researched before I started writing if I had that idea without the prompt, if that makes sense. And then kind of finally, we've talked about the challenge and we've talked about the pieces, but I think, I mean, this is obviously attached to those things, but I think the last thing to kind of talk about is like the experimentation in me as a writer and what it did for me as a writer. And firstly, it was great to sit down and work on a different piece every day because it really allowed me to kind of stretch the creative juices. That didn't really make sense. It gave me the opportunity to try a bunch of different things without having to decide like, yes, I'm going to do this, I'm going to finish this piece, this is for a reason. It just allowed me to be free. And by doing that, by allowing me to be free, there were definitely pieces that I wrote that aren't something that I would usually be drawn to, I think. For instance, there were a lot more like romance plot lines than I thought would show up. We saw a lot of younger audiences show up, which I thought was interesting. Of course, there were a lot of things that I expected to show up as well. I tend toward darker, moodier, sometimes gorier themes and images, so that definitely showed up a lot. I'm also a huge fan of survival type things, survival video games, and then like post-apocalypse and things like that. So survival themes showed up a lot. And then two other things that showed up a fair amount were like mental health and queerness, which I think makes sense. I think, you know, the advice of write what you know is really good advice, but also it's not great advice because you should be able to write things that you don't know just by having an imagination. But I think very often things that you know or things that you are going to shine through in your writing whether you mean to or not. So being So like prompt driven, kind of like made those things come out because they're the easiest things to write about. Like the things you know are going to come up. And I realized there's another section in my notes that I haven't talked about yet, but this segues really well into it, which is prompts and how the prompt, like how prompts, whether Inktober prompts or prompts otherwise, work. Because everybody can look at the same prompt and write something completely different. And I think that that's a really interesting thing. And I would love to like get together like a group of writers, like, I don't know, once a month or something like that, and give everybody a prompt and see, and then like talk about what we wrote after, just to see where other writers like take it, because it's not just the prompt that prompts the idea. Everybody is bringing their own life experience, their own writing experience, their preferences to that prompt, and so very different things are going to happen. And this is something that I tend to write as part of my writing prompt posts, and that is like, let me know like what genre you took it, because you can have a prompt and like, because I don't really have a genre that I always write or anything like that, like experimenting with this was kind of a little bit of me like trying out different genres. But so because of that, like even when I create a prompt, I'm like, this could go so many different ways and so many different genres, and then I'm like, I want to write them all. And so I just think it would be really interesting to like see the process unfold for a bunch of people. So also that means that if you did do Inktober and you did write for these prompts, I would love to hear about how different your stories ended up from mine. Oh yes, and then the last thing about prompts was the connections made after. This didn't happen a lot, but there were a couple prompts where after I'd written, I was like, wow, how did this not show up in my immediate thoughts? And the two that come to mind are button and vacant, because button, like I only thought about buttons, and then cute as a button, which I'm not really sure where that saying comes from. And how I hadn't had that thought yet is kind of crazy. And then the other one was vacant, and I only really thought about like vacant places. But then when I was creating the title, I was like, what about a vacant stare? How did that never come to mind? And that would have brought up like a completely different story. So maybe that's an interesting challenge, to have a prompt, like, I don't know, like a weekly prompt or something, and then for like 5 days that week, it doesn't have to be a week, it could be whatever, but write like so many different stories from a certain prompt or something like that. Or if you are a multi-crafter, multi-creative, it would also be interesting to take a prompt and then like write a story, compose some music, draw a picture, sculpt a thing, like whatever your like creative outlets are, like take that prompt and make something in each of those and see like how they go together, how they were different. Iggy, are you being real right now? Iggy, come on. Hey! Stop that. Luckily I think that's kind of it. The last thing that I wanted to say was that there are going to be more videos coming, and I will definitely try to make shorts out of those videos as well. But because I don't know exactly what those videos are going to look like, I don't know what those shorts are going to look like. Also, this definitely wasn't a short, so I don't know if I'm going to like take pieces out of this and this will actually be the full video and I won't do a fully scripted thing. I don't know, you might not get to hear this part. But videos that I know are definitely going to get made is I'm doing a supercut of all of the shorts that is also going to include some like stats about it. I do have a list. Let me pull it up because I've said this a couple times and it is written in one of my videos, in one of the vlog posts, but let me tell you what they are. So like beside the short, there's going to be stats, and they're going to be genre and age category, other keywords and themes, the POV, kind of like some keywords about the main character, and whether or not it's a scene or a story, because I found that a lot of the pieces like didn't really lend themselves to a long story, but that doesn't mean that the scene couldn't serve a purpose in a like larger story. I feel like I added one when I made the list on the video, but I could be wrong. I guess you'll have to go find it. I think it's in like the 6th one. So we'll have that supercut, and then I'm going to do a tier list to kind of review each of the pieces a little bit more in depth than those stats, and also decide which pieces we're going to explore further, which brings me to kind of the third type of video that's going to come out that I don't know exactly what it's going to be yet. But it is going to be expanding some of the stories. I'm considering doing more writing vlog, and then doing more like the editing and revising of my flash fiction from over a decade ago videos, but do them for these stories. Something else I've considered is just walking through the process of one. So like taking what I have, creating an outline for it, then writing it, then editing it, revising it. And then maybe even going so far as to talking about how to find a place to query it, and then submit it to a literary journal. We'll see what happens. That might be a really interesting series to do. So of course, if that sounds really interesting to you, let me know that it sounds interesting to you, because obviously I haven't decided exactly how I'm going to do that yet. If you have suggestions for parts of the writing process that you'd like to see with one of these stories, or if you have a particular story, let me know. Obviously, you don't know a whole lot about the specific stories in this one, so it's probably best to go back and watch the vlogs or wait for the supercut and watch that so that you have an idea of the stories. But if any of those sound super interesting to you, let me know. Yeah, I think that's it. I think that's my reflections on the challenge and a little bit on the pieces, but there will be more on specific pieces in the tier list video. If you want to see the tier list live so that you can give your comments along the way, let me know. I haven't decided if that's the way that I want to go with it or not yet. Right now we're done. So I hope, obviously, if you want to see these, you're gonna have to like and subscribe so you get brought back for more. I hope you guys had fun. I had a blast. Catch you next time. Bye.